Hey Hunters, Halo Zoo here for a relatively quick video. So I have the new player's handbook because I went down and got it from the local game store I used to frequent. And I've been looking through it, and also I have kept up with 1D&D's class reworks and all that stuff. So I wanted to do a quick video of what I think the best and worst class reworks are. Uh, Now, to explain this, this is my own opinion. I do have some objective stuff that I'm going by, but there will still be some subjective stuff here. Uh, However, this isn't about power level, period. So power level is not the problem here. I am looking at balance and mechanical updates. So this isn't what's the most powerful, what's the weakest. This is, hey, these classes have fared better or worse. So I will be going through that. So being nerfed heavily or buffed heavily doesn't matter. It just matters, is the class in a good place, both with its internal balance as well as with its balance to the rest of the game. But then I'll be focusing on the classes specifically, though some spells and rule changes may get mentioned when relevant. So while I'm ultimately looking at the classes, I will inevitably have to mention certain spells. Mostly because they are very relevant to the classes in question. Also, as a quick explanation, there are 3 sets of 4 classes, so this isn't a, like, number 1 to 12 list. This is either, like, there's 4 good classes, 4 meh classes, and 4 bad classes. Though by bad, I don't mean 2014 Monk bad. They're very functional. And also, in every case, they're still better than 2014, but they just don't get quite enough, or they may be too good. And overall, I will say 11 out of the 12 class reworks are really good. There's just one that I am not happy with what they've done with it, and I think it's actually in a bad place, but even if they did try to improve it, it didn't work out as intended. So anyway, let's start with the rankings. So the good includes the Monk, the Paladin. Yes, it is a very good remake, Power Gamers. The Barbarian and the Druid. Then the meh includes the Cleric, the Wizard, the Fighter, and the Sorcerer. Then the bad is the Rogue, the Warlock, the Bard, and the Ranger. And that, of course, comes with the asterisk. The Ranger rework is actually really good. It is a massive improvement. It is just a massive improvement over the worst designed class by far in 2014. Like, Monk was just weak. Ranger just sucked. Anyway, the good classes. The Monk. I mean, as much as I said, like, this isn't an ordered list, Monk is easily the best rework of them all by a wide margin. They actually have a good regain resources outside of a short rest ability, something that actually just about every other class can't really say. Like, it's ridiculous. There was a nerf to stunning strikes, but I mean, that was a bit crazy anyway, because you could just either guarantee you get a stun on one enemy, or make it where you stun multiple enemies. Yeah, it's one of those. Yeah, it is a nerf, and I have a buddy who says like, "Oh, they shouldn't have nerfed it." It's like, no, they really did need to, because I mean, where ultimately my philosophy with it is, it absolutely deserved it, because ultimately what it was before was a very overpowered ability on an otherwise terrible class. So, what do you think would happen when that class isn't a piece of crap now? Yeah, it's not good. But uh, now at least it is much more balanced, and has actually also been like kind of side graded in a way where it also now has a fail condition. So if you don't stun them, you do get a lesser effect, which is awesome. Yes, it's not all or nothing anymore. Yay. So at the very least, while you only get one per turn, you do always get something out of it. Also, Way of Mercy got nerfed. I believe their Flurry of Healing was removed, basically. Or at least where they could do multiple heals per flurry. Fair. And once again, it's like, if anything deserved to get nerfed, it is the one subclass that was kind of considered the one good way to play Monk. Like, if you're going to play Monk, that was the one good subclass they had. Even though I don't think it was the best designed, it's just, it was good enough to play anyway. So once again, if it's enough to be like, oh yeah, it's good, even though it's an otherwise terrible class, it might need to get a nerf before it becomes even crazier. Uh, and also, they got a stealth buff with the grapple and shove being part of unarmed strike now, which means monks are now the kings of grappling and shoving, which is unfortunately frightening due to a certain spell that did not get changed, even though it really needed it. Though that is going to be most relevant later. So I'm not going to mention it yet, but just know there is a spell that really ends up being too good now. Uh, Even if it was kind of like off on the side before, but we'll talk about that later. Not mentioned, but Way of Elements, actually good now. Like, incredibly good now. So, yeah, they've straight up redeemed it. Like, it went from the worst subclass to one of the best, in my opinion. It's. Whew. So, yeah, it's definitely impressive. Now, my one problem would be that they didn't nerf Way of Shadows teleport, because it's a bonus action 60-foot teleport that's at will. Like, sure, you need dim light and darkness, but I mean, it's still an at will teleport that then gives you advantage. The crazes, wizards. Why is this still in the game? As it is. Definitely needs a nerf, but ah well. Though I will say, at the very least, its first level feature, the Shadow Arts, much better, even if they removed a lot. It's like you only get one spell now, but that spell actually works. And you also just get dark vision all the time now. So you're not given a stupid key point tax. Uh, Up next, the Paladin. A bit controversial to some people, but I gotta say, you're full of crap. Divine Smite has been nerfed, but that is completely fair. It was the single most overpowered feature in the game, bar none. Early game, it just takes over everything. You just can't stop it. And it being a spell is less of a concern than you'd think, but ah well. Uh, so, I mean, yeah, it can be counterspelled. Yeah, it doesn't work in anti-magic fields, but why the hell should you be able to use spell slots on what's basically a first rank spell? So, yeah, it's kind of silly. Like, it's always been a first rank spell in all but like when it would actually matter to counter the darned thing. It's like, oh, suddenly it doesn't count because it's not a spell. It's like, oh my gosh. So yeah, absolutely deserved. Also, another thing to keep in mind is that the other smite spells will work the exact same way. Uh, Now there is some issues with it being a bonus action, but I'd rather have all smite spells and smite like spells to be, oh yeah, they all work the same way, but it's like it's a bonus action after you hit with the weapon attack. So basically it triggers like Divine Smite, but is cast more like the old smite spells. So yeah, I'd say this is a much better place to be in. Divine Smite isn't so overpowered. You can't spam it anymore. Uh, there are concerns with the bonus action, but I will say my only concern is that it doesn't work with offhand attacks. That's my one concern, but even that can be alleviated via the Vex weapon mastery. Or not Vex, that piece of crap. Nick. So you can do stuff to get around it. So there is that at least. Uh, but Polar Master not being as good on Paladin anymore, I'll be blunt. I welcome this. You should not be able to use so many spells in a turn that you absolutely blow even Meteor Swarm out of the water in terms of damage. Like, if a class is so annoying that depending on whether or not the paladin uses their abuses their smite or saves it for later, can change a fight so drastically that it's impossible to balance, it needed to be nerfed. Lay on Hands is a bonus action now as well, and before you say, oh no, that competes with Divine Smite, think for a moment. Were you using those together anyway? No, you never were, because Lay on Hands took your whole action, so you couldn't attack. It's like, you mean you're upset over something that didn't work before? It's very disingenuous. So, yeah. It's like, I'm fine with this. It's like, who cares if you can't use it with Divine Smite still? You can actually attack and lay on hands in the same turn now. That is a massive buff. Another thing that people are... I've seen some people upset with that Paladins get is that Divine Steed is here as a feature at 5th rank. It's like... or 5th level. It's like... you're upset that you get a free casting of Divine Steed as just a feature they've added that doesn't replace anything. It's just a free, hey, here's an extra spell slot each day. And the same is actually true for Divine Smite, as it's like, hey, here's a free Divine Smite per day. Have fun with it. It's like, that's what you're upset about? You're upset about something that doesn't replace anything, really. And just... yeah, it's the free Divine Steed. So it's like... yeah. It's like you're complaining about them getting free Steed back? Like, it's just a fluff feature. You can't be upset about that. And then Channel Divinity has also been tweaked around a bit. So Divine Sense has been moved into Channel Divinity, but you get more uses of Channel Divinity now as you progress. So there is that at least. And to be fair, Divine Sense was not something you used every day. So choosing between it and Channel Divinity isn't too bad. And then also everyone now gets the Abjure Foes, which is pretty nice to have, actually, as just, instead of, like, especially since the three main, like, Paladin Oaths all had basically one very similar thing, but it was like, Devotion could turn undead and fiends, but then Ancients added Fae as well. It's like, just some very weird stuff that was kind of similar space, but now it's just folded into one feature that all Paladins get. That's good. Also, several of them got buffed, like the ones for Devotion and Vengeance. You cast as part of the attack action. They're not a pain to use anymore. Awesome. So overall, I'd say Paladin is actually one of the best, by far. The Barbarian. So, Barbarian's top end has been massively buffed. Rage is also buffed to be way easier to maintain, so you can actually maintain it yourself if you need to. They've added Brutal Strikes to replace Brutal Critical, which is a cool new feature. I just wish you got the extra effects no matter what you did, and the choice was just between accuracy and damage. But other than that, everything else is good. And for subclasses, Berserker doesn't shoot you in the foot anymore. Yeah, it's awesome. Like, it's a bit less thematic in some ways, but honestly, I don't really care too much. It's just, it does more now. And you can actually play it without needing to be, hey, can I use this but not have it shoot me in the foot? And then Bear Totem is not the only choice on Wildheart. Awesome. I just wish they didn't go so crazy with the specified resistances. It's but oh well. As for the Druid, Wild Shape HP removed. So no more cheesing HP as a Moon Druid. Good riddance to that. Because that was one of the other more powerful features of maybe a bit too durable at times. Also, speaking of Moon Druids, they actually get to use spells in Wild Shape. Circle of Land is more focused as a kind of caster type druid, so it's got a lot more interesting stuff going on. And it finally gets an alt Wild Shape use. Now we're just waiting for Circle of Dreams to get theirs. And then the new Circle of the Sea is a new circle and a new subclass that I actually feel deserves to be added here. As for reference, I am not a fan of there being so many Tasha's subclasses reprinted and how many new subclasses were added. Not a fan of them showing up, but Circle of Sea, they get a pass mostly because it actually makes sense to split it off from Circle of the Land. My only issue is that their aura is way too short-ranged. It really needs more distance to it. As right now, rules is written, it's kind of bad. It doesn't really live up to what it could be yet, so it needs work, but ah well. Then we go on to the meh. So we start off with the Cleric. So Divine Order is a cool feature. Also, before I forget on Druid, they do have Potent Cantrip as an option. However, it's later level option, so it's late game buff. Sucks. 300-foot range is not a buff you needed. Because also, like, I will say this now. Produce Flame actually is a very functional spell now, as it actually has decent range by default. And isn't a pain to cast, so it's like you just cast it as a bonus action, and you keep the flame. It stays to light the area. Awesome. Which was a problem before, but then they added range as a buff, and it's like, we do not need this. Like, this late. It's like, why? Because Cleric, from their Potent Cantrip, which is kind of linked to Divine Order, but it's a pretty cool idea. Basically, instead of having bonus proficiencies in the domains, you can now make your own type of Cleric. So you could be a War Cleric who's more focused on casting, if you wanted to be kind of a weird build, or you could be more focused on doing damage, which, and being a tank and stuff, as even a Life Domain Cleric, or a Light Cleric, which is definitely a cool concept. It is nice to have that, as it also stealth buffs Forge Domain, which was easily the most baffling domain before, because you got armor proficiency, but not weapons, which wasn't good, because they had an even more aggressive oriented domain spell list compared to even War Domain. Divine Strikes no longer gets damage determined by domain. Not the happiest with, but well. Their second Potent Cantrip upgrade is actually good, because it gives temporary hit points, which is awesome. Divine Intervention, though, it is useful. A bit too useful. Mostly because what you can do is pretty ridiculous, where you can just cast any spell of 5th rank or lower as an action, so long as it's not a reaction spell. You'll notice that only reaction spells are excluded, which means you can cast spells that take longer than an action to cast. This is where the problems start coming in, as this enables some stupid stuff, because, I mean, you can cast Hallow this way, you can do Raise Dead, which I think Raise Dead is fair, and it is what they intended you to do with it. As they've said, it's like, oh yeah, you can do Raise Dead with Divine Intervention. That's fine. I mean, not using the Material Clone, it's kind of ridiculous, because especially for Raise Dead, where it's like, so you mean to tell me this spell you might only need once per day, you can cast for free once per day? Okay, that's maybe not the best idea, but oh well. However, the most problematic by far is actually going to be Prayer of Healing. Now, while that sounds ridiculous, like, oh, that's such an innocuous spell, why would that be a problem? Well, the problem is that now, once per day, when you use it, it gives people the benefit of a short rest. Yeah, so what that means is, as an action, you can use a spell that is absolutely not intended to be cast mid-combat. Yeah, no. I will say ahead of time, I am absolutely house ruling it to where it's like, no, you do not get to do that with Divine Intervention. The only spell you get to do that doesn't take an action to cast, action or bonus action, is going to be Raise Dead. That's the only one you get, is Raise Dead. Just because I do not want someone to try and pull a, oh yeah, I'm in a party with a monk and a warlock, and just gonna casually, oh yeah, the warlock gets all his spell slots back, also the monk has all his key points, or focus points as they're now called, back. Which is actually another change I hate on the monk. What idiot renamed the subclasses to Warrior of Blank? Way of Blank was so much better, and I refuse to do it, to say Warrior of Blank. Whoever did that was an idiot. It doesn't sound better. It's awful. Now then, back to some good stuff for Cleric, though. Channel Divinity has gotten some good updates, and Seer Undead. Replacing Destroy Undead is definitely a great improvement, as it's just like, oh hey, you know how you could destroy certain undead, but it was like low CR undead? Yeah, now here's just an ability that will always work. It's just... So it always works, because turns out you don't really fight many low CR undead as a in-game. It's like... It's one of those... Yeah, it doesn't really do much, does it? So that is a good upgrade that they've done there. The Wizard. Largely unchanged. Like, they get 2 new features, which is they're better with knowledge skills. So they get expertise in one, which is cool. I would have liked it to be Arcana plus one of your choice, but well. You also get the ability to re-prepare spells, so you can change what spells you have prepared, which is great. Also, the subclasses are improved overall, especially Illusion. That one probably got the best. Not sure how the hell Divination kept Expert Divination, though. I don't know what the hell they're thinking. That needs to go die in a hole. Because it's just bad. Like, really bad. And not bad as in, oh, it's crap. It's bad as in too good. It's like, why do they keep that atrocity? Especially when Mind Spike is in the book. It's like, what? How the hell did this survive? Really? Ugh, kill it with fire, please. Up next, and keep in mind with the Wizard, ultimately it's mad because it hasn't really changed. It's like, yeah, it's Wizard still. I mean, most of the changes are positive. It's just doesn't really knock your socks off. Fighter. More second wind uses. Pretty good. It would have been nice if they were also recharging on a short rest, but it is what it is. And they always get to push sap or slow with attacks past a certain point, so that's cool. Indomitable is a lot more useful now, so that's good. And studied attacks is a great concept for a new feature, but it's utterly ruined by Vex Weapon Mastery. Because I'll say this about Weapon Mastery. I don't like it. I get what they were going for. It does not work, in my opinion. If you haven't seen my 5.5 stuff, I have recently mentioned that I'm doing a whole rework of Weapon Mastery because I don't really think it does a good job at what it does. And Vex is just busted as hell. It's ridiculous how good it is. Especially because, like, with studied attacks, it just becomes, you swing your weapon. Oh, you have advantage on the next strike. It is stupid that actually made it through. And I fully acknowledge studied attacks, like, yeah, it does enable that combo, but Vex is the problem. Because it's also a problem on Rogue, where it's like, oh, so when you hit, you get advantage, which means you're more likely to get advantage on the next hit, meaning you can kind of ignore stuff like steady shot, or steady aim and all that. Champions still exist, and I still hate it with a burning passion. Especially because now it's way overpowered because studied attacks Vex combo exists. let's just say pistol-wielding champion. If anyone ever brings that to my table, I'm going to tell them to immediately rework that character, because I do not want to see that at all. No. No Vex-abusing champions, please. Especially since Piercer exists, and yeah, no. That is stupid. Battlemaster has improved a little outside of combat superiority, at least, which is definitely nice. Especially since they had probably the worst feature in the game. A feature so bad, they reused the concept for the worst subclass ever designed in Mastermind. Yeah. And I will also say this, now Battlemaster can actually kind of stand up to Arcane Archer and say, yeah, not only am I in power better than you, but now I'm mechanically a bit better than you now. Or at least I'm not utter trash compared to you mechanically. Because Arcane Archer, at least, well, Arcane Shot wasn't as good as Maneuvers. At the very least, their features outside of it were actually worth having. Battlemaster, I mean, it still has problems with presentation, because, like, they try to say improved combat superiority is a separate feature. It's not. Really isn't. Last but not least, for the meh, this one I'd actually say kind of borders on the good changes, but ultimately it's knocked down to the meh. I could see this swapping with Druid, but yeah. Anyway, Innate Sorcery is neat. It also gets better in the late game. It does have some limited uses, but, well, Wild Magic is even crazier, and I love it. My only issue with Wild Magic now, you can't become a Smurf anymore. Like, come on, that was the funniest thing. It's like they kept the Beard of Feathers, but not become a Smurf. I mean, you still potted plant yourself, but like, overall, it's much better and more fun. It's just, I liked the idea that you could become a Smurf. I just loved that that was a thing. Now, as for Dragon Magic, though, it has more spells. Yeah, they gave you extra spells now. Awesome. And the capstone is worth using. It's not some random piece of crap that doesn't really feel appropriate. It's, oh hey, here's something that actually pertains to dragons. And kind of being this elemental blastery / brawler type character. Now, of course, I do have a problem with the other two subclasses that they chose, because we really did not need a Clockwork Sorcerer in Aberrant Mind reprint. Especially if you were going to print Clockwork just about as written, except you can't change the spells. Which, fair, but they could have saved that for later. And Clockwork really could have used a cantrip. Same with Dragon Magic, actually. I'd probably give both of them a cantrip, like the other two with extra spell list, or expanded spell list get. And then Clockwork also, they really needed Alarm to be replaced by Shield of Faith. I get it's thematic, but honestly, it's a piece of crap spell that they really don't need. Twin Spell, however, I hate it. Just outright not a fan of this being Twin Spell. It's like, you mean to tell me that instead of a meta magic that does stuff all the time, and I can always use and access, I have a meta magic that only works on very specific spells and doesn't really twin the spell. It just, oh, you can target an extra thing. If it could heighten to target an extra thing. Yeah, no, it's absolute garbage. I much preferred the first change Especially with the idea that maybe you could actually mix it in with having uh, with Quick and Spell to actually get what the old one did, but it is at an increased cost, and you're using two different meta magics to do it. But this, no. Just no. They could keep the idea or what it does, but expand on it as basically the new heightened spell. But and then also just have it always work. It's just, oh yeah, here's heightened spell, now heightens the spell and makes it upcast. But having it that is twinned spell, awful. Just no. Please get it out of here. Uh Now the bad. Now, once again, disclaimer that the bad does not mean these are weak like the monk. It just means that these needed more attention. So, yeah. The rogue, barely changed compared to most. Cunning Strikes, at least, is a great new addition. So that's nice, at least. It adds a lot of utility. Like, my biggest problem with Cunning Strikes is literally that the poison option doesn't make your poison effect, your sneak attack, do poison damage. It is purely for stupid flavor reasons. And ultimately, it's like, well, wouldn't that make it worse? Not really, because it doesn't do anything against enemies immune to poison anyway, because they're also immune to the poisoned condition. Because, yeah. So, ultimately, I don't think there's anything that is resistant or immune to poison damage that isn't immune to the poisoned condition. I mean, there might be some obscure thing, but far as I know, 99% of the time, it's you either you don't have poison damage resistance or immunity and not immunity to poisoned. Assassin is actually worth staying in now as they get actually good stuff later, which is good. That said, unfortunately, the progression for the subclasses is identical to the way it was before for really no reason. I get there's backwards compatibility concerns with this. I don't care. I want the second subclass feature at least 2 levels earlier. Please. Also, reliable talent still exists. Still don't like it. If only because it's kind of too much of an auto-win thing where it's like, oh yeah, 10 plus your proficiency. Oh wait, expertise makes this utterly stupid. It's the same reason I hate College of Eloquence Bard. Among other things, but because its design is also terrible, but yeah, reliable talent, stuff like that, I do not like it. I think it should have been 6 plus modifier rather than 10 plus mod, just to make it where it's like, it's good, but it's not overpowered with expertise, especially. Then we have the Bard. They just did not get enough attention. You're still learning spells, even though they say prepared, which is another change I absolutely despise. I don't know why they made it more confusing like that, but they did. So it's like you're still learning spells, which causes more problems now than it did before, even when it was already like, so you mean you have an awesome utility spell list, but are absolutely crap at using it? That's a great idea. Font of Inspiration still around. Not really a fan of it. Mostly because of just the, oh, so you mean Bardic Inspiration is too good to have on a short rest resource until 5th level? Okay, could this not at least be, I get 1 use back per short rest until Font of Inspiration when I get all of them? Yeah, not a fan of that. Also, a fourth subclass feature would be awesome at like 10th level. Or rather, have the third feature at 10th, and then you get a fourth at 14th. Now, one thing I will give it credit for is Bardic Inspiration is better, because you use it after you roll the d20, not before. Very useful. However, then there's Magical Secrets. So, I gotta compliment you on this, Wizards. Somehow, you managed to find the most absurd way to word Magical Secrets that is also utterly trash and awful to use in practice. So, what it does now is instead of giving you more spells known, you can now add the Cleric, Druid, and Wizard spell list to the Bard spell list. And that's it. No extra spells. No help actually using that expanded spell list. Nothing. So, what happens is now, once you hit Magical Secrets, suddenly your entire class progression is now upended because you've got to deal with effing Magical Secrets being stupid. Where it's like, oh, crap. So, it basically replaces your Bard spells. So rather than getting more Bard stuff, you have to stop getting Bard stuff and just to use Magical Secrets at all. It's so stupid. That said, though, they actually have a good capstone, as their previous capstone was basically a resource regen thing, which sucked. Now you get power words for free. And buffed power words, too. Awesome. That does, honestly, work a lot better. So that's a good upgrade, at least. Oh, before I forget to mention it, though, Monk's new capstone, while it's good, I don't like it. It's boring. It's just Primal Champion, which is itself a very boring and stupid thing, but well. Just not a fan of the flat stat increases. Actually going to talk about Ranger next, not Warlock. So yeah, let me preface this with, compared to 2014, Ranger is easily the best off by far. It's improved from even Tasha's. I mean, you prepare spells now, finally fixing the problem that came with learned spells, where it's like, oh, you've got all these cool utility spells. It's a shame you're not actually really capable of using them effectively. You also get Hunter's Mark baseline. That said, it is not amazing. As sadly, 2014 has still scarred this class beyond a doubt. And I think ultimately nothing is ever going to make it what it should be. It's going to have to wait for 6th edition to get actually good. Because ultimately, not much can be done. I'm sorry, guys. It's the blunt truth. All because they brought Favorite Enemy back in 2014, and not even a good version of it. So ultimately, with the new Ranger, it is a vast improvement, but it just needed a bit more. That said, I will also mention that their unique spells, they have had some actually made to work like the new Divine Smite. Namely Hail of Thorns, Ensnaring Strike, and Lightning Arrow. So 2 of those actually work with Hunter's Mark now. Awesome, great. It doesn't get in the way of doing that, and they're actually usable. While Ensnaring Strike, yeah, it doesn't stack with Hunter's Mark, but I'll be honest, that's kind of fair. It's either you get advantage with ranged weapon attacks, or you get more damage on all your attacks. So I think it's some give and take. It's like advantage in disabling or just more flat damage and tracking. So that definitely plays out well. Unfortunately, Hunter's Mark still gets concentration, but the free uses per day, still like it. A part of me does wish they had no concentration as a later thing, due to the concern that basically lost us concentrationless Hunter's Mark, being its multi-class abusability, which, yeah, I think ultimately is like, yeah, I guess that's fair, but then there is another problem that we have to talk about. You know how I said there's a spell that really breaks monks being the masters of grappling? Yeah. Spike growth did not get changed at all. That means it still works as it did in 2014. The version that let Dao Warlock be absolutely busted and do way more than it should be able to. As Hunter's Mark, or not Hunter's Mark, Spike Growth still triggers whenever an enemy is moved within the zone at all. It doesn't have to be willing or not. Whether it's willing is irrelevant. If it moves 5 feet or more, it takes 2d4 damage for every 5 feet it's moved. This unfortunately mars the Ranger alongside Conjure Minor Elementals, especially when you get to 5th rank spells, where it's just, oh yeah, instead of using Hunter Mark, just use this because it's way overpowered. At least for Melee Ranger in the case of Conjure Minor Elementals. But Ranged Rangers, well, unfortunately, you're kind of pigeonholed into wanting to use the heavy crossbow, get crossbow expert, and then just use spike growth because, oh hey, look, 20-foot push for ludicrous amounts of damage that should not be possible. So yeah, suffice to say, it's still really dominated by the spells from Druid, and Conjure Animals even, in its new form that's utterly busted in my opinion. It's just crazy how powerful those spells are. And it's just, it overshadows Hunter's Mark, which, because they're just way too powerful. And all three are just more powerful than they should be. Period. Where ultimately I will be blunt and say that those 3 spells are nerfed. Spike Growth, I'm just going to say, nope, no abusing forced movement with it. It now has it to require the target to willingly move. So, that said, you can do something like command it to run through the Spike Growth, or like if you are mind controlling it, you can move it through the Spike Growth, but that, you can't just, oh, as a rogue, oh, I'm going to grapple you, and then suddenly speed dash around and melt the enemy into oblivion for free, basically. Just because someone's put a Hunter's, or a Spike Growth, or for the Ranger, it's like, oh yeah, use the heavy crossbow and then push people for 8d4 damage per turn. Extra on top of the heavy crossbow damage. Yeah, it's really stupid, and as a result, I'm like, yeah, no abusing that. Now it is just the enemy willingly moves through it. Forced movement effects are still going to be good with it, as it can force an enemy into the zone, so they have to take the damage. That is it. Conjure Animals, meanwhile, I'm just going to nerf so it's more in line with Call Lightning, since it currently does the same damage even though it hits way more enemies. Yeah, it's kind of stupid. And Conjure Mind Elementals, I don't think any DM will bat an eye at saying, no, that spell does not upcast to be the dumbest thing in the world. It only upcasts for 1 die per rank above 3rd or 4th. So it upgrades by 1d8, not 2d8. I don't know why it got printed like that, but it did. Granted, the Conjure spells are just a whole other mess that I'm not really happy with, but oh well. Now the Warlock. I'll be honest, this is the one class rework that really misses the mark. So, Pact Boons are now invocations, with 0 restriction on getting different Pact Boons. Yeah, so now you can get the good spellcasting from Pact the Tome, the Blade from Pact of the Blade, and the Familiar, along with all the best upgrades for each, in one stupid Warlock build. Yeah, mix that with being Celestial Warlock, and oh, you've got a kitchen sink Warlock that is able to do everything. I mean, they've got a very powerful Familiar that's buffed. They get even more cantrips and rituals and can swap out to have any cantrip or ritual they want, as long as it's first rank ritual. And they have a good melee weapon that is way better than it should be. It's just utterly ridiculous to think that this is actually possible. You can do that, and it's stupid. Then, Magical Cunning. Utter piece of crap. So, once per day, for half the game, you can get back, or actually almost all of the game, you can get back exactly 1 spell slot for 10 minutes. Yeah. That's your Band-Aid for short rests. Yeah, that is not good at all. I will be blunt. Like, Monk especially makes this just look dumb. It's like, yeah, Monks roll initiative. Oh, suddenly they have all their focus points back. Warlock. Oh, I gotta take a 10-minute break. Yeah, hey, I'm just gonna take 10 minutes. Oh, hey, I got 1 spell slot back. Whoop-de-frickin-do. Not sure why short rests were not changed to be 30 minutes or less. Because that's the problem, wizards. If you're wondering why every class with a short rest resource is having resource issues, maybe it's because people don't like taking short rests because they're a frickin' hour long. Nobody likes the idea of stopping and waiting to rest for 1 hour in a dungeon where these are supposed to be used. Like, a 15-minute or 30-minute break is way more reasonable to work in than a whole frickin' hour. It's like, the problem is clearly with short rests, not the features. Though I will say in the case of Warlocks, they definitely could have used an extra spell slot before 10th or 11th level. Because, yeah, like, why the hell do they still stay on 2 spell slots for almost half the game? Like, and they spend exactly half the game under 3 spell slots. It's ridiculous. It's such a flat progression that really needs to be cut down to where it's like, oh yeah, no, it's... Instead of having this massive plateau where you spend half the game at 2 spell slots, there should be a 3rd spell slot earlier, and then you should go up to 5. The subclasses, at the very least, are all better now. And Pact of the Blade is actually good without Hexblade, or at least playable without Hexblade. You still kind of need it because you need the proficiencies, but Ah, well, it's not as parasitic as it was, which is good. I will be honest. Like, anything to kill the worst mistake of a subclass, yeah, that's good. I wish that was the fourth subclass, or a replacement to Hexblade was the fourth subclass, but oh well. Can't have everything, I guess, but eh. Uh, and patron spells are auto-learned. So awesome! I mean, I'm not using it on the Warlock I've been playing yet, but I mean, it's mostly because it's like, yeah, that's a process I don't want to go through. But that is definitely an awesome quality of life change of, yeah, no, this doesn't take up your spells known. Uh, so yeah, that's good. But then we get to more invocation issues, because they just could not avoid them. Eldritch Blast upgrades weren't reined in. Yeah, Agonizing Blast can be applied to other cantrips, but is still utterly ridiculous with Eldritch Blast because it still can be triggered multiple times on a single target. So one cast of Eldritch Blast can stack Agonizing Blast multiple times on a single target. Great. I hate it. And because of that, they've added a new invocation to give Pact of the Blade a triple attack. Let me be perfectly blunt. There was zero need for this. This is an insult to all martial classes in the game. You're going to give a quote-unquote full caster, or at least full progression caster, triple attack, but you're not going to give it to the barbarian and the monk. Why can't they have triple attack when they can? This is despicable. It is utterly trash design, period. Pact of the Blade did not need triple attack. Agonizing Blast needed to be nerfed. Heck, all of the Eldritch Blast upgrades, or at least what used to be Eldritch Blast upgrades, should have been they only trigger once per target each cast. Now, if you have Quicken Spell for some reason and cast it twice, okay, sure, you can use it, trigger it both times. That's fine. But you should not be able to stack Agonizing Blast with Eldritch Blast on a single target. That is the whole problem Warlock has had from day one. That is the problem. And yet you're slapping more on top of the class to try and balance it, rather than stop and think, wait, why the hell are we giving triple attack to a caster and not a martial? And why the hell do they need it? Oh, Eldritch Blast is overpowered, which they're trying and failing to resolve in a very different way that doesn't work. Because the problem is still there. It's like, it's fine for Eldritch Blast to be the best, but it's still so good, it overshadows everything else you can do. And that needs to die. Seriously, like, it's to the point where another house thing is, yeah, no, we're using fixed Agonizing Blast, where it only triggers once per cast on Eldritch Blast. Or once per target on Eldritch Blast casts. And the new Devouring Blade invocation, dead. Don't want to see it. You're not going to insult martials as a warlock. That can go die in a hole. I don't care. But anyway, overall, these have been my thoughts. And as I said before, like, even the bad classes, they still have good stuff except Warlock, which, though I will say with Warlock, it's better than what we had. It's just, it's gone from, it's a bit behind other classes, but it's okay to play. to, oh my gosh, this is way better than it should be. So it's better. It's just, it's too much better. To the point where it's like, it's kind of the most overpowered class in the game. Especially if you play Celestial, where you can build a build that can just do everything in the game in one class. Yeah, it's ridiculous. But anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have your own thoughts on what makes each mechanically, not in power, the best and worst class updates, go ahead and feel free to comment that down below to open up a discussion and stuff. But anyway, without further ado, I'll see y'all next time. Halo Zoo out.